I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
My son Aaron has a wonderful way of coming up with topics for these talks from time to time. And this one on overcoming is another one that sprung from one of his recent experiences. As you know, my son is a student in my Tai Chi school as well as living here with my wife and I, obviously. And he's actually becoming remarkably proficient in his Tai Chi practice. And yesterday he was working with one of the way senior students, David, and Aaron actually managed to throw him finally. First time ever. It surprised David, it surprised Aaron, it surprised the rest of us. And so we're all standing there, looking at this in kind of shock and amazement at first, followed by the congratulatory cheers and what have you that accompany the first time somebody accomplishes something on that order of magnitude. The way that he accomplished it, many people find somewhat interesting because it wasn't through the addition of several more years of rigorous practice and gentle and cautious exercise. He achieved this by not thinking. And the way that I helped him learn to feel and not think was by having David go a lot harder and a lot faster with him than he had previously, because that deprived Aaron of the time required to overthink what was happening and forced him to respond, which kind of is what the practice of Tai Chi Chuan is all about when it comes to the defensive arts. There is a particular set of skills that we're cultivating within the school as people progress through the training. They learn explicitly more and more of what these skills are. Earlier on in the training, trying to explain it is largely pointless because the experience and background doesn't exist to create understanding. However, in a brief period of time here, we're going to try to paint kind of a broad brush picture of this skill set. It's referred to as the 5-character secret of Tai Chi Chuan. It seems that every discipline has its numerological and mystical teachings embedded in it somewhere, and this is one of those for the practices of Wudang Mountain Temple Tai Chi Chuan, the 5-character secret. It relies on calmness and agility and breathing and what's called internal force or internal power and the spirit of the person. We'll deal much more with the spirit aspect of this set of skills over the next probably couple of weeks, because it's going to take just a bit to get through this. But these 5 attributes form a foundation layer for the practices of most all of the Tai Chi Chuan defensive arts. And so here's kind of how that works. Calmness for us creates stillness in the body and mind and spirit. And this is where I kind of answer Aaron's question, which initially was, how come I wasn't more fearful in that encounter, and what was it that helped me to overcome that anxiety, that fear, that absence of thought, and progress to simply doing, being, and responding. This is the first of those skills. Aaron's been practicing long enough that he has developed the confidence and the martial skill to no longer fear an opponent, no matter what level the opponent practices at. Now, one may ask at about this point in time what that could conceivably have to do with the Tao studies. Let me tell you. The Tao teachings are mastered in very much the same way, I have discovered. It requires an investment of time and effort and practice, a certain amount of understanding, a few mistakes, and a lot of falling down. And without that investment of time and effort, the results simply are not forthcoming. The secret to Aaron's confidence, to his ability, to his skill level, is specifically, as it stands now, 7 years of really hard, intense work and practice. I am continually amazed at the number of folks who believe that all that's required to make either Tai Chi Chuan or the Tao teachings work is faith. That's just not it. That isn't going to get it done. Faith is an element, to be sure, of what we do. But the desire to be successful, to have a better life, to refine ourselves in both our secular and spiritual existences, mandates a certain amount of effort and practice, without which absolutely no forward progress can be made. And because of that practice and that investment of time and effort, we develop the first of the 5 characters, the internal calm and tranquility. The practice gives us the confidence, the knowledge of our own abilities and skills, and the level at which we can apply them to establish a comfort level in both living and conflict resolution, if you will. I truly prefer that we not fight, but in life in general, there are just all kinds of opportunities for conflict that can be resolved using these principles without getting involved in any kind of a confrontational situation. The second thing that we derive from that practice, from the ability to maintain this level of serenity, is the ability to utilize some real clarity of vision and some real understanding of the situation that we're in. Fear and anxiety and extreme emotionalism tend to skew our perspective on the situation we're facing at the moment. In the martial sense, an opponent that we're afraid of tends to appear bigger, stronger, tougher, more agile. It's a perceptual thing, but it's a very real thing. Our brain translates that level of risk that we perceive into a visual image that represents the perceived threat. As our level of skill advances, the closer to realistic that mental image becomes. I didn't realize how significant that was until after I'd been practicing for a number of years. And some of the people that I trained with who'd been around for as long as I had all of a sudden stopped looking so doggone big. I don't think they were really shrinking, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't either. But for some reason, that perception changed, and it was over another several years of thinking and analyzing and observing that I stumbled across that perceptual difference. And it happens to most everybody that I know that practices. It's an interesting phenomena. That practice, that effort, provides us with an absence of fear. That confidence that I've been speaking of here for the last few moments. That absence of fear allows us to judge a situation realistically and objectively, and not through the lens of anxiety. And because we're not beset by all of those emotions, we can concentrate and coordinate our internal efforts to bring about the most positive possible result. Additionally, when we operate from a position of confidence and relative fearlessness, from a position of strength, if you will, we have the ability to maintain a high level of self-control because there is no need to engage in a conflict or to allow ourselves to be manipulated by other people or situations. The next two, agility and breath, kind of go hand in hand. Agility is, of course, not just limited to physical mobility. We're talking about not only physical agility, but mental agility, the ability to perceive and understand and react to what's going on around us. It implies in its inception, present moment awareness at a high level, and the ability to accurately discern and analyze a situation and then wisely choose a course of action. It implies an ability to respond appropriately to the things that come our way. Okay, I've had it happen from time to time where I'll be deeply involved in something I'm doing at the office, where my concentration is 100% focused on that 3 square foot piece of real estate where my monitors sit, and I'm working on something that I'm developing, or I'm working on a problem, or something else is going on, and somebody will come up behind me and tap me on the shoulder, and instead of my usual cheerful response, because I'm completely involved in what I'm doing, my reflexes take over, and all of a sudden I have this poor person in a wrist lock. That doesn't happen real often, but it has happened. That is not the appropriate response. It just isn't. And so knowing that could happen, I've installed a little rear view mirror on my monitor so that I no longer get surprised that way. But that's part of the learning curve in establishing proficiency with the 5-character secret, is understanding, how to gain that clarity, how to gain the vision, and then how to respond appropriately to what happens when you do. It's more about learning to feel what's happening than to analyze what's happening. And this, in point of fact, is what Aaron did. David went to launch a flying kick at him, and because it was coming harder and faster and more quickly than Aaron was used to, because he didn't have time to think, he just instinctively stepped in, turned his waist, and tossed him, which was outstanding. It was exactly what he should have done. If David had been going much more slowly than he was, I'm not sure Aaron would have necessarily gotten there. What Zhan Song Feng says is that as soon as an opponent touches him, as soon as he feels the passing of the breeze on his skin or a hair, his mind is already permeating the bones of his opponent. That is to say, he is already completely aware of where the opponent's going, what the opponent is doing, the amount of force the opponent is attempting to apply, and he's already dealt with it. That's the agility. The other half of this is the breath. Proper breathing allows us to maintain calm and tranquility, to maintain our mental and spiritual center. It helps us to gather the chi. It is life itself to our bodies. If you don't believe that statement, try not breathing for a couple of minutes. That's exceptionally difficult to do. Some folks can hold their breath for maybe 5 to 7 minutes, but I don't think anybody can do it for much longer than that. Not sure what the record is. I don't even want to try to get there. The human body will fight for its last breath right up until the point that life passes from it. And without it, we cannot exist. But the way that we breathe, the manner in which we bring air into the body, has a lot to do, particularly in Tai Chi Chuan practice, with how the chi moves through the body, how it's gathered, where it's concentrated, how it's expressed, how it's discharged. Everything revolves around and in concert with the breath. The breath allows us to concentrate the Jing as well, the life force of the body, mind, and spirit, the essential energy that is the encapsulation of us. It is that part of us that represents the transition from the physical and mental to the spiritual, the connection between the limitless chi, the eternal Tao, and the internal components of the person. Those things unified are extremely powerful, virtually unstoppable. But when they're disconnected, uncoordinated, and disjointed, then they're ineffective and difficult to move. Next, we talk about internal force. The internal force, the Qin, is the Shin, the mind intent in action. And for those of you who speak much better Chinese than I do, please forgive any typos or mispronunciations. I'm allowed. The Shin motivates the essential energies. It is the mind intent that causes all else to happen. And within that mind intent then derives Tianjing, which is borrowing energy or stealing power from an opponent, and Fajing, which is issuing power, discharging. These two things, in very brief summary, constitute what we call opening and closing, gathering and discharging, bringing the energy into the body and expressing the energy in movement. This is what makes the martial technique in Tai Chi Chuan so powerful. But without the previous attributes, the internal power is diminished, and the force one can derive from attempting to utilize it is tremendously reduced. There's a reason for the order of these attributes for the 5 characters. There is a method to their practice and a manner to their application. One cannot truly learn to use the internal force until one understands the breath, the agility, the thinking, the calmness, the tranquility. And without those, one cannot access the chi. There's a degree of awareness of the self that's required to feel and understand the movement of the energy within the body that requires a certain amount of peace and tranquility. The internal force is the expression of that understanding. In the Tao studies, there is that very same internal force. Those who are extremely adept at this practice are able to control the elements of their own lives and their own situations in such a way that they never compromise themselves, and yet things typically go their way. It isn't that there's never the occurrence of misfortune or bad luck or, the usual just rotten life events. People in their lives still die. People still make mistakes. People still have car accidents. Every now and again, the refrigerator breaks down, or the dishwasher doesn't work, or the computer falls off the desktop. Those things are just life events that happen to all of us. But even when those things happen to those folks who are really adept at this, at the back end of the disaster, if you will, typically is a positive outcome and a happy and more joyful experience. It is a remarkable and sometimes very confusing thing to watch. And yet those sorts of things happen for me all the time, and I certainly don't call myself a sage or an adept. I'm at best a rank amateur of a Tao student. But what I've discovered is that there is a tremendous amount of latitude extended to those who practice the Tao teachings for the sake of the practice. I don't know if it's due to karma, or if it's the movement of the Tao, if it's a natural law, if it's something that we bring about to ourselves. Who can really say? But I know that it happens. It's nearly miraculous in its occurrence, and it's absolutely wonderful. That is the representation of the internal force. It is the ability to have things happen in our lives that bring about the beneficial and positive results we desire, even when sometimes it doesn't look like it ought to go that way. It is the expression of the belief and the practice. And to the degree that we expend the effort and practice necessary to learn to master the skills, the results are achieved. The last of the 5 characters is the spirit. And this one we're probably going to have to spend more than just today on. We've laid down a good foundation, but it's taken a fair amount of time to do so. The highest level of the 5 character secret, the practice of the spirit, is the fully integrated, kind of complete individual. The individual who operates from a standpoint of oneness and unification, where the Shin, the Qi, and the Jing are all unified and concentrated. The energies are gathered in the body in their appropriate places and move at the will of the mind. There's total present moment awareness, but there's no ego, no self, no real desire or attachment that inures to the movement of the essential energies. There simply is the response to what happens. There's, because of that, no situation that can't be successfully managed, no route that cannot be successfully navigated, no conflict that cannot be diffused. All of those times when Master Huang would tell me that if I wound up in a fight, I hadn't managed the situation right to begin with, and I never understood what he meant, I finally understood what he meant. But it wasn't until I began to practice at a much higher level than I was at when he started saying that I could understand it. The reason is there's really not a good reason to wind up in a conflict if we understand the situations before we go into them. I have been asked, and I'm sure people will ask again, gee, Bill, what do you do if somebody kicks your front door in and comes in after your TV set, or they're trying to hurt your wife or kids, or somebody attacks you on the street? Well, the trick to this is one level higher than that. It's understanding that those things may happen and taking ourselves out of the way before they do. That's managing the situation. And therefore, if I wind up in a conflict, I didn't manage the situation right to begin with. If somebody breaks into my home and what they really want is my TV, why can't they have it? That's what I have insurance for. I realize that represents a 180-degree turnaround from what I used to say philosophically. But I believe that what I'm telling you guys now is the right way. None of our possessions is worth potentially being killed over or getting into a fight over. It's what we have insurance for. Or even if we don't have insurance, the TV can be replaced. What's the most important thing if somebody attacks your family? It's your family's safety. You start a fight over that, or do you get them out of the way to a place where they're not in harm's way? It's just a different way of looking at things. Different way, a higher way of responding. The spiritual level of the 5-character secret is the union of Tai Chi Chuan and the Tao. What I tell my students is that there is no mastering Tai Chi Chuan without understanding the Tao teachings. That's the truth. Tai Chi Chuan was divined at the Wudong Mountain Temple. It is a Taoist temple. The philosophy of the Tao intertwingles with and permeates every word of Zhang Sangfeng's teachings. And so no one should be surprised that I've put together this set of presentations that unify both the practices of Tai Chi Chuan and the practices of the Taoist teachings. This level of practice is the perfection of form and function that I alluded to last week when I said that I was attempting to perfect what is still at this point the imperfect. Got my throat dried out. To kind of tie this up for you, and we will talk about this some more. All of us are trying to enter that domain of the spiritual self. We're all trying to understand the higher level of being, the more joyous way of living, the better way to do things, the better set of answers. That's a common human goal, even if we don't necessarily know that's what we're trying to do. Okay. This is perhaps one way to help get there. It may not be the only way, but it seems to work for me. Secondly, attaining that spiritual level of practice, okay, that doesn't just happen by accident. It doesn't just happen at all. It requires years of practice and learning and understanding and making mistakes and falling down, and in my case, getting thrown in the swimming pool at the governor's apartments. Thank you, Master Wong. Or bounced around on the tennis courts. But it took years of that. And even after that, when Master Wong said I could teach, he patted me on the back, and then he said, you only have the whole rest of your life to practice. At the time he said that, I didn't have any idea how right he was until I'd done it for a couple of years, and then I realized how much I still didn't know. That's kind of humbling. With the Tao studies, just like with the martial practices, this stuff doesn't just happen. We have to be prepared to apply the effort and the practice and the work and make the mistakes and do the falling down so that we can acquire the understanding we need to progress. Okay? Faith alone doesn't make it happen. Neither does wishing it were so. We cannot visualize the future we want to create and have it fall in our laps. People that do that starve to death. We've got to be motivated enough to take the steps. And as soon as we take the steps, then the Tao itself will move to support us. I've seen it happen. We can say the very same thing about any other discipline that we want to get involved in. It's true of everything that we do. So whatever the path we choose, whatever it is we decide to get involved in, we need to make sure that we're prepared to give it our best effort, our full attention, 110%. When it comes to learning how to get through this life, that's an appropriate level of practice. It's all we have to do is get through one day and into the next. So perhaps we should apply that complete and total focus, that practice and effort, and expend the energy that's necessary to make the wishes come true, to make the practice successful, to attain that level of Tao cultivation. Thank you all awful much for letting me share with you, and as always, I sure hope something I said was useful to someone. Thank you very much.
Hey, Bill, thank you. One remark stood out for me in your talk, and that is the concept to manage the situation. So this I feel deserves some extra emphasis, and I actually have a story to share with you. I think you'll get a kick out of it. So basically, when martial arts practitioners talk about managing the situation, they are basically talking about this skill that does not appear to be fighting, but instead is the awareness that allows you to steer clear of conflicts.
Yes.
And there are specific practices to allow one to heighten that particular awareness. And awareness itself is always a tricky thing because when you are lacking in awareness, well, you are not aware of the lack. That's the problem. So
right on the money so far.
The story I want to share with everyone is about this. Is in addition to managing the situation, it's also related to a previous remark about how oftentimes in life things may be the opposite of what they appear, and a Tao cultivating practice means that you heighten your awareness as you observe the world, and it's a guarantee that you will find plenty of humor in these situations where we human beings have our little quirks, and things turn out to be not how they appear, or sometimes maybe even the opposite. So the story goes like this. Once upon a time in ancient China, there was a kung fu expert who was well known for being undefeated in battle. So in his younger days, he had traveled the land and challenged people to fights and so forth. in that process, he actually made quite a few enemies. So later on, as he attained a higher level of Tao understanding, he realized that his youthful ways were actually quite mistaken, and he really needed to cultivate peace and harmony in his life. So he retired from all that. He decided to move to a faraway place in the mountains, and as a way to be further away from civilization and avoid all the enemies that he had made over the years. Now, two of those enemies that in previous years he had beaten up pretty badly, they found out where he lived in the mountains, and they decided to get revenge on him. So they tracked him down, and from a hiding vantage point, they observed him for a month, and they saw that every day he would take a mountain path to the nearest village. He would go there, and he would come back. So he followed this routine every single day at exactly the right time. So this meant that they could easily pick the best place for an ambush to surprise him and then get their revenge on him and beat him up like the way that he had beaten them up years ago. So they staked out for that 1 month. They got the pattern down. They picked the point for the ambush. It was ideal, undetectable, and total elements of surprise. So they picked the date when they would actually implement this plan to get the revenge. So they're there at the ambush point, well before the time that he would arrive, and they waited and waited and waited, and there was no sign of him. So what they did not realize was that this particular Kung Fu master had attained a higher level of the Tao where he cultivated this awareness to manage the situation prior to conflict occurring. So he had already sensed that there was something going on, And if you watch Star Wars, you would say that, he felt a disturbance in the Force. In any event, he realized that he was in danger. His spidey sense was tingling, so to speak. And, he went around the path that he usually took, and he saw his enemies waiting for him. So it didn't matter to him. He just took a different path, and that was it. So those two guys waiting to ambush him continue, not realizing this, continue to wait and wait and wait, and pretty soon, it's an hour after the time that he was supposed to arrive, then 2 hours, then 3 hours. So finally, one of them, got very impatient and broke the silence, said, "He's late." And the other fellow said, "He's very late." And after another moment, the first guy says, "Well, he probably won't come this way today." So his partner said, "Well, that's strange. In the month that we've staked out the spot and observed him, he has always taken this path every day at the exact same time." So the other guy thought about it for a while and said, "Well, these mountain roads are treacherous. Maybe he took a fall and injured himself." So they thought about this, and first guy says, "Well, I hope he's all right." And the second guy says, you hope he's all right? So he can be here on time? So we can beat him up to get our revenge?" So that's the story.
That's a good one.
And yeah, Bill, I hear you're shocked into silence. So the demonstration, the point that I hope to make is that indeed, for someone who's truly in tune with reality, you can be aware of something that is impending, and then you can take steps to avoid that. Now, a real Tao cultivator would also find an opportunity to seek out these these two guys that are waiting to ambush him, and then make his apologies and remedy whatever previous wrong that he had done, seeking forgiveness. So that's probably easier said than done. We probably all have enemies that we are pretty sure we will never reconcile with them. But nobody said it was easy. The concept is simple, but it can be rather difficult to implement in real life. Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.